Hello, and welcome to Radiance Revealed, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jen Haley. I'm a board-certified dermatologist, fitness enthusiast, nutrition expert, and global explorer that over the years has uncovered that your skin is a true representation of your internal health. Each week, we will chat with leading health, wellness, and even spiritual experts who will reveal secrets to true health and vitality. My goal is to help you change small habits to give you the power to create a more balanced, aligned, and elevated version of yourself. Now let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Radiance Revealed podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jen Haley. And today I want to talk about a concept called hormesis. It's something that I'm obsessed about, and I'm constantly thinking about how we're using hormesis or how we can use hormesis in our lives. So you may have heard about it. If so, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it today in more practical terms. And if you haven't heard of it, I'm going to explain it to you. So have you ever heard the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger? And that is basically hormesis. So when we think about the human body, it's not like a machine. The human body is almost opposite a machine. So a machine like a car or any sort of electronic, any device, basically the more you use it, the more it wears out and you don't expect it to last forever. And it gets weaker and doesn't work as well over time. Our body is the opposite. So the more we stress it, the stronger it gets. The more we use our brain, the better it gets. The more we lift weights, the more we do resistance training, the more we do impact training, the stronger our bones get, the stronger our muscles get. So that is basically the concept of hormesis. But there's some clever things that we can do to enhance that. And even in nature, there's something called xenohormesis, where plants that are grown in a controlled situation on a farm with pesticides and herbicides applied so they don't have to work hard to stay alive. They don't have the same nutrient density as plants that grow in the Himalayas, for instance. So Himalayan tartary buckwheat is super high in phytonutrients because in order to survive at elevation in harsh climates, plants will produce more nutrients, more protective chemicals to protect them, and only the strong survive. So we want to be the strong that survive, right? So this concept, the concept of hormesis is basically that short, intermittent bursts of certain stressors, these hormetic stressors, trigger a cascade of cellular processes that enhance health, slow aging, and make you more resilient to future stresses. So remember that it's a short and intermittent bursts of certain hormetic stressors. So we want to find the sweet spot, right? Because too much stress can weaken your body. It can weaken your immune system. It can wreak havoc on your physical and your mental health over time. And too little stress basically turns you into a couch potato that's disintegrating. So there's a sweet spot. And I know we often conceptualize as humans that more of something is better, but this is not the case. This is rarely the case that more is better, and we get into trouble when we do too much of anything. So remember that, especially when it comes to hormesis, we need to find that Goldilocks effect, that sweet spot. And what we want is short-lived, acute controlled stressors that will trigger a healthy adaptive response, and that will make you stronger. So what does this even look like for your body? One of the examples is intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, where you give your body a break from eating so it can clean up the trash, basically will help it'll produce a cascade of hormonal cellular responses to clean up your senescent cells. So as we're constantly consuming, our metabolism is going, and we're basically building up a large amount of metabolic waste products. So when we take a break from eating, we give our body the chance to kind of clean up. So I think of it as Thanksgiving. So just say Thanksgiving, you cook a huge dinner and you have tons of dirty plates in the kitchen with food on them all over the counter, pots and pans everywhere. If You don't take a break from cooking and you just cook your next meal and your next meal and your next meal. You're going to have more and more and more piling up of trash and piling up of plates and piling up of everything you don't want in the kitchen to the point where you won't be able to cook anymore, right? So this is what happens when we're feeding our bodies all the time. When we feed our bodies all the time, basically what's happening is that we're not giving our body a chance to clean up and take out the trash. So intermittent fasting allows your body to do that. So there's a sweet spot for that, right? Because too much intermittent fasting or too much fasting turns into starvation, and nobody wants that. So that's where we're finding the sweet spot. We're not eating all the time. We're giving ourselves a little bit of a break to digest, repair, renew, clean up. Another way that we can use hormesis in our lives is with cold exposure. So I'm not great at this. I live in Arizona. It's about 50 degrees outside right now, and I have the heat on in the house. And I keep telling myself, try not to put the heat on above 62, because I know that getting out of the comfort zone, getting out of our homeostasis is going to make our bodies stronger in the long run. And that's what we want. So one of the ways you can do this, besides getting a little bit colder in the winter and not putting your thermostats at 68 in the winter and 68 in the summer, or 70, whatever your preferred temperature is adjusting with the seasons. So when it's hotter, feel a little hotter more time. When it's colder, get colder more time, more often. And if you're in the biohacker world, or if you're aware of a lot of the science that's going on right now, there's a huge trend towards cold plunging. And with cold plunging, what's currently recommended based on the literature that I could review, a lot of the research is done out of the Baltic area, and where I actually attended the most amazing biohacker retreat last year in Estonia. And we did jump into 2 degrees Celsius lakes, which was extremely invigorating and not as hard as I thought. It was the thing I was the most scared of doing and the thing I love the most. But the sweet spot for this is 11 minutes per week divided into 3 to 4 sessions. So, maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time, 3, 4 times a week is a nice way to do these cold plunges. And I think earlier in the day is recommended because it pushes it increases your dopamine levels remarkably, and it sets you up for a very positive day. But when you think about it, too much cold exposure, now that's going to give you hypothermia. So we're going back to what is the sweet spot. Okay, another on the opposite end would be heat exposure. So we're looking at sauna, hot yoga as an option. And the sweet spot for that is 3 times a week, about 15 minutes per session. So when I was at the biohacker retreat, I mean, these Finnish people, they do things so perfectly when it comes to the sauna. It's a very ritualistic experience, which is beautiful because that ritual in itself and that community in itself just does so much for your health, more than we often tout and discuss. And we would do cycles of cold, hot. So we'd go into 180-degree sauna for about 15 minutes and then go into the cold plunge. And we do about 3 or 4 cycles of that. And I thought that was just a beautiful experience. But once again, when you're doing too much heat, now you're getting hyperthermia. So we're finding that sweet spot. But the cool thing about heat exposure is that it releases heat shock proteins. And heat shock proteins do a lot of things. They're chaperones, basically, but they also play important roles in cell signaling and apoptosis. Some people might call that apoptosis, but it's apoptosis regulation, or cell death, controlled cell death. So when cells no longer have a purpose, we want them to die off, right? We want controlled cell death. And heat shock proteins play an important role in that. So getting a little cold, getting a little hot, not eating all the time, these are some things you can do to get out of your comfort zone. The fourth thing I wanted to talk about was high intensity interval training. So you can do short bursts of exercise. There's many ways to do this. You could do it with Tabatas. I like sprint training. I don't do it as often as I should. I actually did it the other day for like the first time in 6 months, to be honest with you. And my legs were not moving as fast as my lungs wanted them to move. So you got to do the best you can. You could do some plyometrics, but we're getting out of our comfort zone. We're feeling uncomfortable for short bursts, short periods of time. Doing this too much is going to set your body up for stress. So a lot of women in particular, you really have to do this according to your cycle. So during the menstrual cycle, in the luteal phase, when estrogen drops, it makes us more sensitive to cortisol. So that's not a time you're going to want to be doing these high intensity interval training bouts. Men, you can get away with doing them more frequently, but women, especially when you're perimenopausal, your body is not going to tolerate doing high intensity interval training as much as when you're younger. You could do it on the bike, you could do sprints, you could do plyometrics, there's classes you can do, but more is not better. I want you to remember that more is not better, because people get very addicted to this and they get in a cycle where it really isn't benefiting them. Also, I look at strength training as a type of hormesis. So when you look at weight training, if you sit there all day and do nothing, your muscles get weaker. When astronauts go and we don't have gravity anymore, when they go into space, their bones, their muscles, everything gets weaker to the point where they can barely even walk when they get back. Now, when we do weight training, resistance training, any weight bearing exercise, our body responds to that stress by actually forming thicker muscles and stronger muscles and thicker bones. So we want thicker bones and we want stronger muscles. Muscles are our metabolic currency. Muscles are what absorbs the glucose when we take in a meal, so that we don't have high glucose levels that can cause a lot of problems with our skin and our bodies. Muscle also is our metabolism when we're sitting all day. So even yesterday, I got into a conversation with someone about, the fact that she had gained some weight after the holidays and she wanted to lose this weight. So she's just getting to the gym and she's doing 20 minutes of the treadmill. And I told her, I said, you need to do some weights if you want to lose weight, because that's how you're going to lose weight. And she's like, yeah, but let me just lose weight first and then I'll work on the muscle, because she's thinking that the muscle is going to make her look more bulky. This is the opposite of the truth. This is not the truth. So when you do cardio, which I'm not opposed to doing cardio, I think it should be fun. I think it should be with other people. I think it should be in nature, because personally for me, cardio is all about the mental health benefits of it and helping, any helping with mood regulation, as well as improving cardiovascular function as well too. But I find that a lot of people use cardio as punishment, which I personally had it in my younger years. But going back to cardio is not the best way to lose weight, because you're burning calories while you're doing your walking or your biking or whatever, but the rest of the time you're not, as opposed to when you're doing resistance training, weightlifting, and you're building muscle. That muscle is burning calories the other 23 hours a day. So you may not burn as much when you go to the gym and lift weights for the 1 hour or the 40 minutes, but you are burning more calories the rest of the time, just sitting there, just being at rest. So huge fan of weight training. And and then going back to the sweet spot with hormesis, if you are doing too much high intensity interval training, now you're overstressing your body and you're producing too much cortisol, and that's overtraining. So sweet spot. And then the fifth thing I wanted to talk about was eating phytonutrients. So I'm more of a meat-based, from regenerative farms kind of person, although I'm a huge fan of sprouts, especially broccoli sprouts and microgreens and high density vegetables. So vegetables that have a high density of nutrients in them. The purple vegetables, purple cauliflower, red carrots. I love all those things. And eating phytonutrients that have glucosinolates in them, that are found in cruciferous vegetables, also will improve your hormesis. They provide a hormesis effect to you. And that is something that everyone should add. I prefer doing phytonutrients earlier in the day. It's because of the sun exposure and the pre-exercise and that sort of thing. But any time of day is going to be beneficial. So basically, the goal with hormesis, using this hormesis to our benefit is that we want to knock our body out of homeostasis. So our body's always trying to get back into homeostasis. And when we knock it out of that comfort zone and get it out of homeostasis, it's going to have to work harder and as a result, strengthen to get back into homeostasis. So these hormetic stressors, basically, they activate a variety of cellular mechanisms and signaling pathways to promote stress resilience. So we want to be resilient to stress, and we need to practice in order to be more resilient to stress. So overall, we get better and better at handling stress in the future when we utilize these short, intermittent bursts of hormetic stressors in our lives. And the other effect that they have is they repair cellular damage. So as long as we're alive, as long as we have a metabolism, we are getting some damage to ourselves just from breathing, just from existing, just from replicating. And these repair processes that occur, like autophagy, for instance, during these hermetic stressors, can be used to help improve our health. So autophagy is the process where our body eats itself. So when a cell no longer, or a metabolic waste product no longer is useful in the body, we want to get rid of it. And that's what the body does with autophagy, basically. Other things that the body does from hormetic stressors is it repairs DNA. Who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that. And it combats oxidative stress, it reduces inflammation, and it eliminates toxins, as does the sauna. The sauna eliminates toxins through our skin because we know that sweat in our body is one of many ways of removing toxins, especially heavy metals. And it also produces new mitochondria. And mitochondria are our powerhouses. That's what gives us energy every day. We love our mitochondria. And then the other thing I want to mention is about neuroplasticity. And the neuroplasticity in the brain is something else we want to utilize hormesis for. So I knew nothing about biohacking until the big virus came. When COVID came around, that's when I started my podcast because I was bored. And when you have a podcast, you could talk to interesting people all around the world. And then also, I'm a knowledge seeker. I'm super curious, and I wanted to learn more information. And in my world of being a physician, especially in the integrative holistic space, I'm already overflooded with tons and tons of information and working on a daily basis. But during COVID, we weren't working as much. We had more free time. We weren't socially interacting as much. So I started learning about the biohacking world and integrating into that space. And at the time when I couldn't travel overseas because we weren't traveling, I ended up going to 40 Years of Zen. It's Dave Asprey's place up in Washington because I was very interested in neurofeedback. So I believe that our brain is probably the most important thing in our body because our brain gives us our mood. It gives us our it gives us our mood. It gives us our motivation for the day. It allows us to interact with people in a healthy way so that we have good interactions with people. And we also can learn new knowledge so we can contribute to the world and have a higher purpose, right? So our brain is in charge of all those things, and it motivates us to listen to this podcast and implement some of these things as in regards to hormesis. So I became interested in neurofeedback for two reasons. The first one was when my son was 6 years old, he was diagnosed with autism. And even though I'm an MD by training, I understand the limitations of traditional Western medicine. It's wonderful for treating medical conditions, but I like to think outside of the box and think of more creative ways to solve problems sometimes, right? That might not be scientifically proven, often by pharmaceutical supported research. So I got interested. I did some research and I said, okay, well, maybe there is a part of his brain that is like lazy, and we need to stimulate it and help it grow so that it can work better, because I feel like there's certain parts of our brain that maybe overwork and are overstimulated in other parts of our brain that aren't. And that's my layman understanding of it because I'm not a neuroscientist, right? And I got him into neurofeedback. And I asked the psychologist who was doing it, I said, does he have autism or ADD? I was so quick to label him, or really I wasn't, but and he looked at me, he goes, it doesn't matter what he has. I'm going to read his brain waves and I'm going to treat him. And he did, and there were certain areas of his brain that were overworking, certain that were underworking, as there is with all of us. And he underwent about 20 to 40 sessions of the neurofeedback. And he just turned 19 last week and he does not have autism. So I'm not saying that this is a way for you to cure your child's autism or anyone's autism. This just worked for my son with his possible misdiagnosis at the time. But either way, neurofeedback is a powerful tool to use your brain in a different way than you may not have ever realized, right? And our perception of the world controls everything. So that's kind of fascinating. The other thing is my ex-husband had a lot of traumatic brain injuries, and I understood the power of neurofeedback to help with that, and also I also understood how the brain can be traumatized and it could affect your personality and affect your behavior 20 years after the fact because of the cascades of inflammation that happen down the road. So I personally figured during COVID, I would go to this 40 years of Zen and do neurofeedback training to help myself because I hadn't been helping myself. I've been helping everybody else around me. And it was mind-blowing. I work with Dr. Drew Pearson. He's a brilliant, brilliant neuroscientist. And my life completely changed after doing the neurofeedback. And then, of course, once you're immersed into this biohacking community, you connect with all of these other people and you just start thinking differently. So that was my experience with neurofeedback and the ability for neuroplasticity, because it's just mind-boggling. When I was in medical school, we were taught that your neurons don't turn over and your brain is set at a certain age. And that's absolutely not true. We have complete power to change everything. We have complete power to change the capacity of our brain, the capacity of our body. We're not limited by our genetics anymore. And that's why I'm teaching you these things so that you can take control of your life. So the other things you could do for neuroplasticity is learn new activities. When my mom died about 5 years ago, I said to myself, why do I enroll my children in new activities every single year and I never learn anything new? I've learned to ski, I've learned to mountain bike, I've learned to play piano, I've learned languages, not all successfully. I've learned to paint. I try to learn something new every single year. So I encourage you to do that. Do something that's hard. Just do hard stuff. And that's the goal with this entire concept of hormesis, is getting out of your comfort zone, and your body will reward you for it. So I want to pivot using that concept of hormesis into how we use hormesis in the skin. So as dermatologists, one example of what we do in the skin to encourage this hormetic effect is microneedling. Microneedling is a great example of this. So if you injure your skin a lot, you will get a scar. Your body will heal that wound with scar tissue, which is a different type of collagen than your skin's naturally made of. If you do micro trauma to the skin through microneedling, for instance, your body will respond with a hormetic effect of thickening the collagen. So as we get older, as we discussed about in Skin 101, the physiology of skin on the previous podcast, your body, your dermis, your collagen, your elastic tissue, your hyaluronic acid, they all decrease over time. And that's what makes our skin more saggy over time and lose its plumpness and its rebound elastic effect. And we could use microneedling, for instance, to cause micro trauma, micro stress, micro damage in the collagen. And as a response, the collagen gets organized again and it thickens and it renews itself. So that's beautiful, right? We have control over helping with acne scars, mild wrinkles, mild fine lines. I like this done in a dermatologist office. So I do not like the derma rollers for a number of reasons. The derma rollers that you can buy on the internet, number one, they are often reused, and infection is a problem because we've learned previously, skin physiology 101, that your skin is your protective sheath to protect you from the outside world. So we want that skin barrier to be maintained properly so that it doesn't allow infection into your body. When you're taking a dirty derma roller that is not medical grade and you're rolling it on your skin, you have potential to introduce infections into the skin. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that the way we do microneedling in the office is usually like a checkerboard punch pattern. It's like a stamping punch pattern. And when we do that, we have proper spacing in between where we are we have proper spacing in between where we're causing that controlled trauma in the skin so that your body can respond by thickening and reorganizing the collagen. When you're using a derma roller, what's happening is you're rolling those needles through and it's shearing the skin. It's tearing the skin in an uncontrolled way. So I do not recommend derma rollers. If you're going to get derma needling, do it in the office. Okay, so microneedling should be done in the office. The other treatment with microneedling is you can get radio frequency microneedling. There's a number of devices out there, and that's microneedling with heat at the bottom. So the heat also stimulates collagen, and it stimulates a reparative effect, and that can only be done in the office under somebody who's trained to do that. So that is hormesis for today. And the next episode, I will be talking about the 4 R's of facial rejuvenation and how a board certified dermatologist evaluates you during your aesthetic consultation and how fillers work, how Botox and other neuromodulators work, and how to even out and smooth out the tone and texture of your skin. So thank you for joining me. If you would like to connect with me offline, please check out my Instagram, Dr. Jen Haley. And my YouTube channel is now up and running, so connect with me there. I'm very responsive to DMs. I'm going to be doing a monthly AMA, and please share and subscribe and rate the podcast. Thanks so much. I'm here for you.
If you're enjoying the Radiance Revealed podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, please give us a review, as that helps others to find this podcast. And if you want to connect with me, please visit my website, drjenhaley.com, or you can find me on Instagram at drjenhaley.
Hello, everyone. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility made for statements made by guests. Neither this podcast nor any of the information contained within it are a substitute for care by a qualified medical professional. This podcast is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice or services. If you are looking for help in your journey, please seek out a qualified medical practitioner.